I'm joined now by the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. Senator, what did you think of the president's harangue of the German chancellor this morning?
You know, it's pretty outrageous. You know, the president gives the back of the hand to our closest and most trusted allies and embraces authoritarian figures like Putin. You know, Russia's whole effort has been to divide the West, especially in NATO. And here they have an American president doing the work for them. I guess Putin's investment in the last presidential election is paying off big time in Brussels.
I mean, the president's call, just to be clear, right, the president calling for everyone to pay more and more of their budgets in defense, in fact, surpassing 2%, going to 4%, which is more than the U.S. spends. Presumably, Putin doesn't want that, right?
No, he doesn't want that. But of course, when the president calls for a figure that even the United States is not doing, he's once again creating a wedge with our allies. You know, Germany, particularly that he took on Germany has been the bulwark of making sure that sanctions against Russia for invading Ukraine and annexing Crimea and its other actions in undermining democracies, including our own, has been the bulwark of keeping sanctions in the European Union, which is not an easy proposition since they work by unanimity. So undermining Germany, our closest ally in this regard, undermining the NATO alliance, does play into Putin's hand at the end of the day, better than any trolls, better than any disinformation campaign that he could perform. Your
Senate colleagues took a sort of unusual trip to Moscow over the recess. It was unusual because it was not a bipartisan delegation, which these sorts of things tend to be. It was just Republicans. And they came back, and Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, a Republican, had this to say. I'd like to get your response. I've been pretty upfront. The election interference, as serious as that was and unacceptable, is not the greatest threat to our democracy. He said, we've blown it way out of proportion. We need to really honestly assess what actually happened, what effect it did have, what effect our sanctions are actually having, positively and negatively, and seems to suggest the time may be to withdraw sanctions against Russia. What do you think of that?
Incomprehensible and totally irresponsible. You know, the president and his fellow travelers who are dancing to the tune of sanctioned Russian Duma members are doing more damage to our democracy than Putin ever could. Look, there is no way, and that's why I forced a vote today in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the question of reaffirming that no sanctions should be lifted against Russia for so long as they continue to occupy Crimea and continue to be invaded in eastern Ukraine, which passed, including, interestingly enough, with Senator Johnson's vote overwhelmingly. So the reality is this is totally irresponsible. And if this was going on, if these comments were going on, or if this is the position that Barack Obama took, I'd be peeling Republicans off the ceiling.
It does seem that the president is successfully sort of moving his base in the Republican Party in towards of its orientation, picking fights with Canada and Germany, while, you know, diplomatic overtures to North Korea, warm words about Russia. Do you sense that he is shifting the posture of his fellow Republicans in Congress on these issues?
Well, I think some of the votes that we had here in Congress on reaffirming the NATO alliance overwhelmingly, I think was critical. A strong vote opposing the president's tariffs policy in a way that undermines and hurts middle-class families and working people and may lose jobs in America if we continue to have this trade war on this basis of tariffs. I think those were strong statements. But I have to be honest with you, Chris, I'm really disturbed by the relative silence of my colleagues, particularly vis-a-vis Russia. For the president to say that Russia is a competitor, Russia is not a competitor. Russia is definitely a foe. It's an adversary of the United States and our national interests and our national security. And when you go into a meeting thinking someone's a competitor, that's a whole different paradigm than if you go into a meeting thinking that they're your foe. And so when the president says that, Putin tried to undermine our democracy through his cyber attacks in the presidential election. He's doing it as we speak. As someone who's been sanctioned by Putin, I can tell you, I have a totally different view of what Putin is all about. He's KGB. I'm fearful of the meeting that the president is going in, especially this one-on-one meeting where we will have no idea of what actually transpired and what the president will give up in terms of some of the critical national security interests we have across the globe.
All right, Senator Bob Menendez, thank you for your time.
Thank you.